What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, and my name is John. And this week we are back with episode 74, where we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC 242 pay-per-view going down this Saturday, September 7th, from Abu Dhabi, UAE. This is a 13-fight card that will start at 10 a.m. Eastern Time with 4 fights on UFC Fight Pass and ESPN Plus. Then we will move over to the TV station FX for 4 fights at 12 p.m. And then the 5-fight main card pay-per-view portion will air at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, a very special starting time for the UFC's pay-per-view. They always make the pay-per-views at the primetime slot, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, but they're making an adjustment for this card because it is in Abu Dhabi, and it's a hell of a pay-per-view card. There's great matchups from top to bottom, and the main event is truly just an elite level MMA matchup that I can't wait to break down. So we have 13 fights to break down, and we are going to start things off in the first fight of the evening in the lightweight division, where we have Madge, who is 8-3-1, taking on Ziam, who is 10-2. The opening betting line for this one was Madge, the favorite, at -350, Ziam plus 250. And right now we are seeing Madge -165, Ziam plus 145. So more action coming in on the underdog, Ziam's way. And I think that's the right side of the action. Ziam is making his UFC debut in this one, and I believe is on short notice as well. He's filling in for an injured Magomed Mustafayev. But Ziam looks very legitimate. He is, I think he's only 22 years old, but he's got a good kickboxing background. He's got 20 pro kickboxing fights, and he also has a very good wrestling game. He's got a huge arsenal of takedowns that he's used in his regional fights, and I've been impressed with them. So I think this is going to be a close fight, so that's why we're seeing a little bit closer of a line in this one, and plus 250 was definitely pretty wide. I think on the feet, Madge should be the slightly better striker. He was really impressive in his UFC debut against Tay Edwards. He came out super aggressive. He dropped him early, got taken down, spent some time on his back, but used that time to threaten with some submissions off his back like he likes to do. He's kind of content to accept bottom position at time, which is a little bit of a worry in this fight, but Madge used that armbar or triangle attempt to get back to the feet, where he was able to rock Edwards with a head kick and then finish him off with another head kick. So he looked extremely impressive getting the second round knockout in that fight. But he does have some slight weaknesses. I'd say his takedown defense and accepting bottom are 2 things that he struggles with. But he has been working a lot on his defensive grappling and takedowns and jiu-jitsu for this camp. He has been filming his entire training camp on YouTube, so you can see the progress he's making. And with him getting taken down last fight, I expect him to come in improved with his takedown defense this time. But Ziam, I think, will be looking to get the takedowns. I think he really needs takedowns to be comfortable to win fights, because his kickboxing is good, but I think that Madge will have that slight advantage, so it won't be a winnable fight for him in just striking. So Ziam will be looking to mix in the takedowns. So I think Ziam will get Madge down at least once or twice, maybe in the early rounds, but as the fight goes later, I think Madge will start getting up from those takedowns, stuffing shots, and then that cardio advantage will come in as well, because Zion is taking this on short notice, 3 weeks notice, and that's going to play in a factor in the later rounds for sure. I doubt that the cardio can be up to point, especially if he's using a lot of offensive wrestling in the early rounds. So I think it's a dog or pass where the line is at now. I would cap Madge around -150 or so. So there's a little bit of value left on Zion where the price is at right now, but the pick is going to be Madge to get it done by decision, but I think that the value is on the dog in this one. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the next fight. This one takes place in the middleweight division. We have Cummings, who is 23-6, taking on Ahkmedov, who is 18-4-1. The opening betting line for this one was Ahkmedov -185, Cummings plus 145, and right now we are seeing Ahkmedov -125, Cummings plus 105. So more action coming in on the dog Cummings. And another line movement that I'm going to agree with. I think this is a very close fight. It really could go either way. And full disclosure, I think it's a very hard fight to predict because both of these guys are kind of slower, older fighters. They're both pretty low output, and they don't really look too inspiring in the cage lately. Cummings is coming off of that come from behind guillotine victory versus Trevin Giles. He was losing the first 2 rounds of that fight, getting outboxed, but Giles got complacent in round 3. Cummings landed a huge overhand left or right, I forget which punch, and then Cummings was able to snatch up the guillotine and get that come from behind victory. So that was a good win for him, but he's moved up to 185 somewhat recently against Trevor Smith. He looked okay. He won the decision just by outstriking Smith, but Cummings is slow on the feet. He's hittable. He doesn't have much reliable offense. He certainly doesn't have good output, but luckily he can come with a big power shot from time to time and has a decent submission game to fall back on as well. The same kind of goes for Ahkmedov. He's a former welterweight as well, moved up pretty recently to middleweight. He had that draw with Vettori where he was rocking him early with big shots, but then gassed out and went to a draw in the last 2 rounds. And Ahkmedov is pretty low output as well. He versus Tim Boetsch, super low output fight. It was a terrible fight to watch. Ahkmedov really just likes to explode with the occasional power shot, but I think he was weary of gassing in that last fight versus Boetsch, and that's why he took it so easy and barely threw anything that entire fight. It was just a lot of stalling against the cage and inactivity. So it's a hard fight to pick because both of their last fights were kind of a head scratcher, and they're liable to be staring at each other this fight, and both of them are going to be looking to counter strike, and neither guy's going to be throwing much. So if this one goes to the scorecards, which I think it should, it's going to be a complete toss-up. I think the judges could be scoring it for either guy. I think it's going to be one of those fights where the fighters landed maybe 5-10 strikes around. So the most definitive ending to this fight would be a knockout on either end. I don't see Cummings rocking Omari. He's got a pretty good chin, but Omari could definitely land a power shot on Cummings and maybe sit him down with a shot. But it's just a hard fight to predict. I'm going to lean Cummings by decision because I think he has a little bit better of an output and cardio and just a little bit better of the overall game. So I think that Cummings will get it done by decision, but honestly, this is going to be a pass for me. I think that even though Cummings has that plus money next to his name, I just don't think it's worth it. It's just too hard of a fight to predict, and I think even if you win a bet on this fight, it's going to feel like a total sweat, and you're going to be going into those scorecards not knowing if your bet's going to cash or not. So my pick is Cummings by decision, but I'm staying away from this one in the betting window. The next fight takes place in the welterweight division. We have Nordin Taleb, who is 15-6, taking on Muslim Salikhov, who is 14-2. The opening betting line for this one was Salikhov, the minus 195 favorite, to Taleb at plus 155. Right now we are seeing the line flip. Taleb minus 125 now to Salikhov at plus 105. So I would disagree with this line movement where it's at now. I think it is a very close fight. It could be another similar fight to the last one, like a near pick'em fight. Fortunately, these guys have a little bit more a higher output and throw with a little more power than the Ahkmedov and Cummings. So I think this one fight is a little easier to predict, but still a very even matchup in this one. So we'll start things off with Taleb. He picked up that nice decision victory over Prepelec in his last fight. Prepelec was a former lightweight coming in on short notice, making his debut, and Taleb just took no risks and outstruck him in that fight pretty cleanly. So that's what he needed, though, because he had lost some fights lately by knockout. He was winning that fight versus Strickland. He looked good. He was his jab was on point. His defense was looking good, but it looked like the pressure of Strickland just got to him in the second round. Taleb started eating some straight punches and eventually got rocked and knocked out in the second round of that fight by Sean Strickland, who is a notorious guy for not having much power. And the pressure and straight punches just got to Taleb and broke him in that round. So that was a kind of worrisome performance. When you're getting knocked out by Strickland, you could think that you were at the end of your career, and both of these guys are, I think Taleb's 37, Salikhov's 35, they're both up there in years. Salikhov's coming off that long layoff. His last victory was all the way back in April of 2018. It was a nice second round knockout over Ricky Rainey. Hit Rainey with a big overhand right to the back of the ear and finished him off with some ground and pound, knocking him out cold in that one. Salikhov is a Russians, I believe a Sambo guy or Wushu Sanda guy. He's got really good spinning back kicks, and I don't just say that as he spams it out there sometimes. I mean, this is one of the few guys in the UFC who can set up his spinning back kicks extremely effectively. Like he'll throw it to the body a couple of times, and then on the third one he'll go to the head, or he'll set it up off his punches really nice. So it's a legitimate path to victory, the spinning back kick. I think he's won multiple fights by spinning back kick knockouts. So on this one, it should be a fight on the feet. It should be a striking matchup between these two. Neither of them are too likely to hit an offensive takedown. I'd say the more likely one is Salikhov, but I don't think that we'll see either guy hit the takedown in this one. Because both of them have actually had a little bit of weakness on the ground. Salikhov got taken down, held down, and tapped out by Alex Garcia. And Taleb was winning that fight versus Claudio Silva, was outstriking him on his way to knocking Silva out in the first round, but got caught up in a takedown, made some mistakes on the ground, and got rear naked choked himself. So neither of them are too skilled on the ground. I think we're bound to see a striking matchup, and I think it's going to be a close one, like I've said. So I think Taleb will be the more active striker. He should win round one. He should be throwing and landing the more strikes, but I have a hard time trusting Taleb to avoid that power shot of Salikhov. I think Salikhov is going to be looking to set up that overhand right, the spinning back kick, and just look to land that power bomb on the chin of Taleb that's had some trouble lately. So in this one, I have trouble laying the chalk, paying minus money for Taleb, to trust that chin of his, to trust that fight IQ of his. And I like Salikhov in this one to come off that long layoff with making some good improvements and get the knockout victory on Taleb in this one. And this is another fight where, even though Salikhov is at that plus money, I'm a little bit worried about laying a bet down on Salikhov, because I think if this one does go to decision, it should be Taleb getting the decision. He will be the more active guy, but Salikhov's Russian. He should have that Dubai crowd behind him. It's a very pro-Russia crowd, and he's going to be landing the bigger, more powerful shots. So Salikhov has a chance at winning a decision. So I think that Salikhov is the right side of the equation. It's definitely dog or pass, and I'm going to pick Salikhov to get the second round knockout in this one. The next fight also takes place in the welterweight division. We have Belal Muhammed, who is 15-3, taking on Takashi Sato, who is 15-2. The opening betting line for this one was Muhammad minus 230, Sato plus 170. Right now we are seeing Muhammad minus 360, Sato plus 300. So much more action coming in on the favorite, Belal Muhammad, in this one, and that's the right side in this one. I think Muhammad is the better fighter wherever the fight goes. His biggest advantage will come in the wrestling department in this one. He's got very good takedowns, top control. He picked up a nice decision victory over Melender in his last fight. He's really only lost to really skillful, powerful strikers like Jeff Neal, Vicente Luque, Alan Juban, not the most powerful guy, but that fight was a few years ago. And Muhammad has picked up some really good wins. He outgrappled Jordan Meehan and Randy Brown and Chance Rencounter. Those guys are all, I'd say B-level grapplers in MMA, and I put Belal in that category as well, but he's just got good top pressure and takedowns, and he's also got really good striking as well. He's got a good boxing fundamentals, and he can take a shot. Versus Jeff Neal, he was pretty much out of that fight, out on his feet, just getting tagged with big punches, but refused to get knocked out and lasted to the decision. So Muhammad's chin can take a shot for sure, and that's really where Sato's only path to victory, I think, comes in this fight, because on the ground, I don't think Sato has the takedown defense to stop the takedowns of Muhammad, and he's actually really worried me in the way that he defends takedowns. If you watch the fight versus Franca a couple fights ago in Pancrase, he was taken down a few times in the early rounds, lost the first 2 rounds versus Franca. He came back, started stuffing takedowns, and won round 3, but in round 4 he was taken down once more and gave up his back and got rear naked choked. So he gives up his back a little bit against when he's getting up from the takedowns, and Muhammad has good back takes. Not the best rear naked chokes, but I've seen him take a lot of backs in the UFC, and like I said, doesn't always get the finish, but he will win rounds in top position. He's a very safe grappler, good positionally sound, and Sato's really only path to victory, I think, is going to be landing that straight left hand and wobbling Muhammad on the feet and trying to search for a finish, because if the fight stays on the feet for a long amount of time, I think Muhammad will start to get the better of Sato, outbox him, start landing good leg kicks, and eventually set up the takedown as well, where he should really run away with the fight. So Sato's path to victory is going to be that first round knockout, try to test the chin, and he could do it. He does have some power in his left hand. He has knocked out a lot of opponents with it before. He knocked out Ben Saunders with it last fight, but in round 1 of that fight versus Saunders, he was getting tagged with some punches and arguably lost round 1 versus Ben Saunders in 2019. So that's not a good sign. And I think Muhammad should be pretty comfortable wherever this fight goes, and pending a round 1 knockout from Sato, I think Muhammad should run away with the scorecards, possibly winning 30-27, or maybe even getting that submission, because Sato has made a lot of mistakes in the grappling realm of things, and Muhammad could certainly capitalize and get that submission. So the pick is going to be Muhammad to get it done by 30-27 decision. The next fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Packalen, who is 8-2, taking on Azaitar, who is 11-0. The opening betting line for this one was Azaitar, the favorite, at -305 to Packalen at +225. Right now we are seeing Azaitar -220, Packalen +180. So a little more action coming in on the dog Packalen in this one, and I'm a little bit surprised. Neither of these guys are very high level. I was actually extremely underwhelmed with both fighters when I was doing my research for this card. So I understand why people came in at that +200, because it is a lower level fight. Azaitar has struggled with takedown defense. Packalen's main path to victory is takedowns and submissions. So there's certainly a path to victory for Packalen there, but I was actually way more unimpressed with Packalen than I was Azaitar. Azaitar trains at AKA, one of the best gyms in the world. He's good buddies with Khabib, and I had some high expectations, thinking that he was a prodigy of that gym and was very well rounded. But I was his striking is super wild. He does not throw anything too crisp. He has some power in his hands, but his takedown defense is really bad. I mean, he was getting taken down multiple times versus Pato when they fought. He got his back briefly taken. He was making mistakes getting back to his feet, and when he's striking, he's not very technical. He was getting hit with some big punches himself. He was swinging big, powerful bombs without much technique behind them, just looking to get that early knockout. And he was actually dropped on the feet really bad versus Charlie Leary when they fought in the first maybe 15 seconds. He has this trend where he just comes out the gate just throwing bombs for the first 30 seconds of the fight, and then he sees where it goes. So Packalen, his striking has been really unimpressive as well, so I don't give him much of a chance at touching the chin of Azaitar and knocking him out early. Packalen's real path to victory in this one is going to be getting that takedown, getting the top pressure on Azaitar, looking for a submission, maybe even winning rounds and getting the decision. But Azaitar, we have not seen him go to the decision too much, so his cardio could not be up to par as well. But I watched Packalen's fight where he went to the decision versus Lebotte, and he looked terrible in that fight. His cardio was bad. He couldn't keep top position. He was getting outstruck on the feet, and that was a fight where his opponent came in on short notice, and he came in there and was able to defeat him on short notice. So really bad performance by him. And Packalen is coming off of a long layoff versus Mark Diakese was his last fight all the way in March of 2017. So a 2.5-year layoff for Packalen. In that fight, he got knocked out in 30 seconds. So Packalen's only had one real moment of success in the UFC, and that was landing an early uppercut, knocking out Gotti, and getting the rear naked choke on him in less than 30 seconds. So I think that these two are going to come out the gate swinging from the jump, and I think that Azaitar has a good chance at touching the chin of Packalen and knocking him out in round 1. Despite him not having very good striking, he throws with power. Packalen's defense is bad, and it's a low-level MMA, so it's certainly possible we see a round 1 knockout. And I think the Azaitar working at AKA and having the more experience lately in the past couple years, I think that's going to come into play. I think his takedown defense will be good enough to withstand the takedown of Packalen, keep the fight standing, and he should outstrike Packalen from then on. So it's not a confident pick because, as I mentioned, lower level MMA, anything can happen. And I was unimpressed with both of these guys' skill set. Packalen coming off that long layoff, he could have made a lot of improvements in that 2 years, and he could come in here and look great and pull off the upset, but I just don't see it happening. I'm going to pick Azaitar to get the round 2 knockout in this one. The next fight takes place in the women's bantamweight division. We have Sarah Moras, who is 5-5, taking on Liana Jouju, who is 7-2. The opening betting line for this one was Jouju, the minus 215 favorite, Moras plus 165. And right now we are seeing Jouju minus 145, Moras plus 125. So more action coming in on the underdog Moras in this one, and I think that's the rightful side of things. And it's surprising saying that because Moras has looked pretty bad lately. I think she's coming off of 2 or maybe 3 losses in a row. 3 losses in a row. But to decent level competition, Pudilova, Bernardo, Chiasin, and Moras on the feet, she really has no striking. She's really looking to close distance right away and get the takedown. And when she has decent takedowns, she has decent top pressure. She came out really aggressive versus Chiasin, got the takedown in the first 5 seconds, and was able to retain top position for 4 minutes. But she was trying to pass guard, wasn't successful, wasn't landing any ground and pound, didn't come close to any submissions. And then after 4 minutes, Chiasin reversed position and then landed maybe 10, 15 good ground and pound strikes and stole the round. So even though Moras had early success with the takedown, had 4 minutes of top control, she still couldn't do enough to win the round, and got smashed at the end of the round, lost the round. Came out in round 2, looked a little defeated. She pulled guard round 2 and got smashed with more ground and pound and got finished. So Moras is really not a high-level fighter. She's looking to get the takedowns, but in her UFC career, she's shot 19 takedowns, and she's only landed 5 of them. So I'm really not too impressed with Moras, but this is a winnable matchup because Jouju is coming in here off of an 18-month layoff. And her last fight was a 5-round decision versus Makhachev. It was a fight over in Russia, and it was a sloppy affair. I was somewhat impressed with Jouju's defensive grappling abilities, but the fight was Makhachev going for takedowns the entire time, and Jouju was getting taken down and was getting put on bottom at sometimes, but she did a good job defending. She defended leg locks and triangles and arm bars and all types of submissions, and that's going to be good for her because Moras's path to victory, I think, is going to be the offensive grappling and the submission. And Jouju showed ability to scramble. She showed ability to get back to her feet, defend submissions. It was really only her takedown defense that really worried me, but it really doesn't matter if you get down to the ground. If you can bounce right back up to your feet and escape the position easily, that's just as good as stuff in the takedown. So she had good cardio in that fight. She was the better striker. She outstruck Makhachev in the entire fight, and she looked good on the feet. She doesn't have too impressive striking, but she's effective moving forward, good throws in combination. She's got a good front kick that she throws a lot. So I think on the feet in this one, Jouju should be the better striker by a decent margin. But I don't think the fight will be contested on the feet too much because Moras is going to be relentlessly closing the distance. And if Jouju is not able to reverse position and get on top herself or get back to the feet, I think she'll lose the fight. If she gets stuck on bottom versus Moras in rounds 1 and 2, I think Moras will run away with rounds 1 and 2 and win on the scorecards. I don't see Moras getting the submission because, as I mentioned before, Jouju's scrambling ability, her sub-defense has looked pretty good. But Makhachev went for a lot of low-level submissions in that one. She was losing position. She was going for low-success submissions, and she showed a lot of inexperience herself. So it was a sloppy back-and-forth grappling fest, but it was 25 minutes, and she showed good cardio in it. She showed she's UFC ready, in my opinion, and I expect Jouju to make some big improvements coming off that 18-month layoff as well. So I'm going to pick Jouju to win the fight. I think that she will be able to escape the takedowns, escape the bottom position, get back to her feet, and outstrike Moras on the feet, maybe even getting a late finish because Moras really has nothing on the feet. She's been dropped before, and she's been outstruck by Pudilova, by Bernardo, and if this one is on the feet, I'm pretty confident Jouju should run away with it. But it's I don't knock the people coming in on Moras at plus 140, 150, 160 because she has a path to victory to this fight. She's got the UFC experience. She might be the bigger woman in this fight, so that top position is going to be key for her. It really comes down to if Moras is able to win rounds 1 and 2 with the takedowns. If she's not, I think Jouju should win rounds 2 and 3 pretty comfortably to the decision. But the pick is going to be Jouju, but it's going to be dog or pass. I can't trust my money on Jouju coming in here making her UFC debut. I always advise, if a woman is making her UFC debut, she better be the better grappler by a wide margin if you want to bet her, because women's MMA fights, they have a tendency of ending up on the ground. They have a tendency of ending in very meme-like fashion, as we saw in the title fight this past weekend. The two of the highest level women in the sport went out there and just rock'em sock'em robots for 50 seconds and got knocked out. So anything can happen in WMMA, and that's why I'm advising to stay away from the favorite in this one, Jouju. I'm just not quite confident enough in her to lay the chalk in this one. So the pick is going to be Jouju, but I'm staying away from it in the betting window. The next fight is going to be in the featherweight division. We have Tukhugov, who is 18-4, taking on Lerone Murphy, who is 8-0. The opening betting line for this one was Zubaria minus 565, Murphy plus 375. Right now we are seeing Zubaria minus 440, Murphy plus 350. So I like calling him Zubaria instead of Tukhugov. He's more well known as Zubaria anyway. One of Khabib's boys, a Dagestani. He's not the same as the other Dagestanis, though. The difference between Zubaria and Islam is huge, so don't get it twisted. Just because they train at the same gyms, they're in the same clique, they're all friends, Zubaria is not nearly the fighter some of his other Dagestani brethren are. He's coming off of a 3-year layoff, has not fought since UFC 198, all the way back in May of 2016, so huge layoff for Tukhugov. He's coming off of a couple suspensions, a USADA suspension, a Nevada suspension for hopping in the cage after the McGregor fight, and now getting over to his fighting ability, I honestly never saw a Zubaria fight before because he hasn't fought in 3 years, haven't had to tape this dude in forever, and I don't remember watching him fight a few years ago, and I'm super underwhelmed with what I saw from him. He really throws power strikes in the feet primarily. He throws big looping hooks and overhand rights. I don't think I've ever seen him throw a straight punch down the middle. No jab, no straight right hand. And he often has trouble closing the distance, getting inside on fighters, getting in that boxing range versus the better striker, and that's how he lost that fight versus Renato Moicano last time. It was a close fight, split decision, but I think the rightful guy, Moicano, won. He was landing the better shots. Moicano was stuffing takedowns. Zubaria's takedowns are just not very impressive. He likes to try to muscle them, and he just does not have a very reliable takedown that he can go to over and over again. And Zubair likes throwing spinning techniques, and he does have a decent wrestling base. Like, he can defend a takedown very well. He has a great understanding of grappling. I just don't think he's nearly as impressive as a lot of his other Dagestani people, which may not even come into contention in this fight because Lerone Murphy's coming in here on short notice, I believe. And Tukhugov should be the better grappler than Murphy in this one. But Murphy has shown a decent takedown defense. He's shown the ability to get back up to his feet, to not accept bottom position, to use the cage to stand back up. And he trains out of a pretty good gym over in England. He trains with Brendan Loughnane and some other high-level British fighters. So the level of grappling that he's getting over there in England is nowhere near the level that Zubaria trains at. So it should be a path to victory for Zubaria to hit takedowns. I'm just not relying on it too heavily because Tukhugov is not a dominant grappler. He's not the type of guy to go out there and land takedowns and keep top control and have good ground and pound. That's just not his style. He's kind of more of a brawler, and he fights in a little bit of an uncalculated way. Now getting over to Murphy's striking, He's impressed me. He's 8-0, not too experienced, has fought some lower level competition over in England, but he looked good doing so. He's got a nice body kick. He's got some real power in his hands. He can fight from both stances, although I believe he's primarily orthodox, but he will go back and forth. And I was just super impressed with him. He hit his own offensive takedowns. He's gotten ground and pound knockouts before, and as I mentioned, his defensive grappling is not bad either. So I think Zubariya should be the favorite. I think he should be around -2 or 300 of a favorite, but where the price is at now, it is an easy dog or pass, easy value play on Leron Murphy, because I think this fight has a great chance of just being a striking battle, because unless Zubari comes out here and he chases the offensive takedown more than he ever has, I think that this one will be a lot closer of a fight than what the odds indicate, because on the feet, I think Murphy might be the better striker. I think he's more technical. I think he's got the better defense. He throws better straight punches for sure. And if he's able to avoid that big looping hook or overhand from Zubariya, I think he should be the better striker. It really comes down to if Murphy's able to stop the takedowns and if he's able to capitalize on the openings that Zubariya gives him. So I'm gonna pick Zubariya to get the win by decision, just because it's kind of like a setup fight for him. Dana White said he was never fighting in the UFC again a couple months ago, and all of a sudden he's back in the UFC and he's got a pretty decent matchup in Dubai. Time for him to come off that layoff and make a statement. I think that he will come in here in good shape and he will probably get the victory, but for a fight that's probably going to be a striking battle, I'm going to easily lay a half a unit bet on Leron Murphy at plus 370. And even where he's at right now, anywhere above plus 250 or plus 300, there's some value on Murphy. So I would say throw a value bet on him. Should be a good, exciting fight. I think Zubariya will eventually get the decision, but it should be a good one, and I think Murphy's a live dog. The next fight takes place in the women's flyweight division. We have Joanne Calderwood, who is 13-4, taking on Andrea Lee, who is 11-2. The opening betting line for this one was Lee the favorite at -165 to Calderwood at +125. Right now we are seeing Lee -220 to Calderwood +180. So I actually was able to bet Andrea Lee as the favorite at -165 at opener. So you know what my opinion is on the opener. It's the rightful side. Andrea Lee is the rightful favorite in this one, and she has pretty much every advantage in this fight. And I was happy to bet on her at -165, and I got in at the right time because her price has dropped since. And I do respect Calderwood. I think that she's made some really good improvements over the past couple of years. She is well-rounded. Her clinch game is good. She's got decent takedowns. She's good at catching kicks. She can throw a submission up off her back. She can keep top position. The only area where Calderwood really struggles is striking at range. And that's really how she lost her last fight versus Caitlin Chukagian. It was a really close fight. Calderwood was landing good inside leg kicks the entire fight. She was catching a few of Chukagian's kicks and got some big dumps and put Chukagian on her back a little bit, but wasn't able to keep top position, wasn't able to do much with those caught kick takedowns. And at range, Calderwood thought it was enough to land a bunch of leg kicks and maybe the occasional punch, but Chukagian was landing the harder, cleaner punches the entire fight. Chukagian was landing leg kicks of her own. She was landing some nice body kicks on Calderwood, and Calderwood was just too content to stay at range and get picked apart by the punches and the kicks of Chukagian. She really lacked initiative in that fight and kind of pissed away the decision, if I'm being honest. That leg kick was really working for her, and she just didn't really capitalize off of it. So getting over to Andrea Lee, she had a really impressive victory over Montana De La Rosa last fight. She got taken down a little bit in that fight. She was facing a really good grappler in De La Rosa, but she was able to get right back up to her feet. She was never really in any trouble on the ground, but she did get taken down a few times, got taken down off of a kick, but she was able to get back up to her feet. She defended an anaconda choke very well, and I think Lee won all 3 rounds of that fight, despite her getting taken down a few times. She does have good takedown defense, good scrambling ability, and good ability to get back up to her feet. So if Calderwood attempts to get a takedown in this one, I think Lee should be able to easily stuff it. And where Lee's biggest advantages come in this fight is going to be that range striking. I think that Lee's straight punches and her own leg kick will probably be landed very well on Calderwood. Lee's got really good in and out movement, and I think she'll have way better footwork than Calderwood. And the clinch is another advantage where Lee should have a big advantage. She's really good in the clinch. She's strong. She throws really good knees to the body, to the head. And I think that even though Calderwood is good in the clinch, good on the ground, I think Lee is just better everywhere. So pending any bonehead mistake from Andrea Lee, like going to her head and arm throw, which she tends to do, I think that Andrea Lee should win the fight pretty comfortably. She will be the better striker at range, will be the better grappler. She might hit her own offensive takedowns, but I see the fight really just going, being a striking affair where Lee picks her apart at range, is butchering the outside leg kick of Jouju, and eventually KGB Lee is going to win the decision 30-27, so that's going to be the pick. Now we are moving on to the main card of the evening. The first fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Taisumov, who is 27-5, taking on Carlos Diego Ferreira, who is 15-2. The opening betting line for this one was Taisumov, the favorite, at minus 385 to Carlos Diego Ferreira as the plus 265 underdog. Right now we are seeing Taisumov minus 250, Ferreira plus 210. So more action coming in on the dog, Carlos Diego Ferreira, in this one, and I agree with the line movement. And it's pretty simple why I think Taisumov is, looked less and less impressive over the years. He was on a big knockout streak for a while, was knocking out some opponents in the first round, has a really good, powerful right hand. He's got a really good, powerful right kick. He'll go to the leg, body, head with it. But outside of that, man, Taisumov is pretty limited. He's kind of a low output striker. He's got good takedown defense, but he doesn't have the highest work rate. He doesn't have the best striking defense. And I was really underwhelmed with his fight versus Desmond Green last fight in Russia. I believe round one was landing some good strikes on Green, but then in round two, it was a competitive fight. He was getting hit with some punches versus Des Green, who's not the highest level striker. Taisumov was just too content to counterstrike, wasn't throwing enough volume, and if he was fighting a busier, more active striker that night, I think that he could have lost that fight. And Carlos Diego Ferreira's last fight, super impressive performance against Rustam Khabilov. He showed incredible takedown defense, position reversals, and grappling in that fight. I mean, he's a third-degree jiu-jitsu black belt, but he showed how high-level his grappling is in that fight, defeating the former Sambo champion in Rustam Khabilov. Ferreira's his striking looked much improved. He had better footwork. His boxing looked better. He had good output and aggression, and outstruck Khabilov all fight. And Ferreira was actually supposed to fight Gleason Tibau a few months ago. The fight was canceled, I believe, fight week, but Tibau is another power striker, wide base, hard to take down, and he throws mostly a counter striker as well. So kind of a similar fighter to Taisumov. So Ferreira's been preparing for that hard to take down, low base counter striker for a while. So this is a decent matchup for him. I think Ferreira will have trouble getting Taisumov down to the ground because Taisumov has good takedown defense. He's got a great base, and he stuffed the takedowns of Desmond Green. And Ferreira is not the best offensive wrestler. He's more of a defensive grappler than he is offensive. But he might chase the takedown in this one. He might feel confident that his grappling is good enough, and it really might be because the way he outgrappled Khabilov was just so impressive. But you gotta be worried about Ferreira is that he got rocked early versus Kyle Nelson when they fought back in December of last year. Nelson came in on short notice, charged him from the jump, and was able to rock him with a few strikes. But Ferreira recovered, took Nelson down, kept top control, and ended up dominating the fight and winning by second round ground and pound TKO in that one. So he got rocked early, though. So you got to think that Taisumov will be looking to rock him early again, possibly knock Ferreira out in round one, because that's where Taisumov is best. It's the power in round one. So in round one, if we see a close competitive fight where Carlos Diego Ferreira is throwing more output and landing the better punches, I think he's going to run away with the fight. I think that Carlos Diego Ferreira is totally the value side of this fight. I got in one unit on him at plus 265. Where the value's at now, it's getting a little closer to where the line should be accurately set at. I think Taisumov should be the favorite. He should be maybe minus 150, minus 200 range, but Ferreira at over 2-1 I think is a good bet. I think he will fight for your money. He will be the more active striker, probably landed the more punches, and if he's able to avoid the knockout of Taisumov, I think he has a great chance at outvoluming Taisumov to a decision, possibly hitting his own offensive takedown and pulling off the upset in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Carlos Diego Ferreira as the underdog to come through and get the decision victory in this one over Taisumov. Taisumov just looked a step slower versus Green. It looked like he fights once a year. He's had 3 fights in 4 years. Meanwhile, Diego Ferreira has had a little bit better activity. Still not the most active fighter, but I've just been more impressed with Ferreira lately. I think he's still improving. He got down to Saif Sayoud's camp over at Fortis MMA, and I think that Taisumov is possibly his best days are behind him. So that's why I'm picking Diego Ferreira in this one to get it done by decision. The next fight takes place in the heavyweight division. We have Curtis Blaydes, who is 11-2, taking on Shamil Abdurakhimov, who is 20-4. The opening betting line for this one was Blaydes, the favorite, at minus 275, Abdurakhimov at plus 175. And right now we are seeing Blaydes minus 485 to Abdurakhimov plus 385. So a ton of action coming in on Curtis Blaydes in this one, pushing him from around minus 300 to around minus 500, which is, I think, a little bit too high. I think that this is a little bit tougher of a fight for Curtis Blaydes than people are making it out to be. Curtis Blaydes is a former D1 wrestler. He's got great takedowns, good top control, good ground and pound. Not the best top control. He's kind of content to sit in guard or sit in half guard and just maybe lay and pray for a little bit. Versus Justin Willis, he was able to take him down at will and dominate him on the ground, but just couldn't find the finish in that one and took that one to the distance. He just showed very little initiative in that one to get the finish. But before that, he's gotten the knockout over Alistair Overeem, the nasty elbows from guard. But and the only time that Blaydes has lost has been to Francis Ngannou. Both of his losses are coming to Francis Ngannou. So Abdurakhimov, he looked great in his last fight. He looked leaner, he looked quicker, and he looked more powerful than ever. I don't know if he took his diet super seriously, took his strength and conditioning seriously, or maybe he just got on that good Russian cycle. But he looked great versus Tibura. He was outstriking him early and eventually rocked him with the left hook and then swarmed him for the knockout finish in round 2. And Abdurakhimov got a pretty good wrestling base as well. He's hit his own takedowns, and he has been taken down before, got taken down by Tim Johnson, got mounted, got knocked out with ground and pound. That was early in his UFC career. Most recently, he was taken down by some trip takedowns versus Andrei Arlovsky. He got taken down twice in round 2 versus Arlovsky. One he was able to bounce right back up from, and one he got stuck on his back to end the round in the last 30 seconds. So, Blaydes is pretty much wrestling or bust. I think that Blaydes' striking is decent. He's got a good chin. He's got a good jab. He's the much faster fighter of the two. But if the fight stays standing for a long period of time, I think Abdurakhimov will have the better striking technique. He will have the more power in his shots on the feet. I don't think, Blaydes throws a good jab, as I mentioned, but he doesn't really have a big power punch that he can go to. Meanwhile, Abdurakhimov has got bricks for hands. He hits really hard. So where the betting line is at now, I think that there's value for days on Abdurakhimov. I think I would cap Blaydes around minus 300, give him a 75% chance to win, but I'm confident with giving Abdurakhimov a 25% chance to stuff takedowns, land some hard shots on the feet, outstrike Curtis Blaydes, possibly even reverse the position on the ground and get on top himself. So He has gotten on top before, and he tends to lay and pray and not do much with the top position, but he's a massive heavyweight. He's going to be hard to get you off of him if he gets on top. So it's a close fight. It's a lot closer than what the odds indicate. I think Blaydes will ultimately win a decision. He will probably get the takedowns of Shamil, and he will probably just keep top position, play it safe like he did versus Willis, and win the decision. But I'm happy to throw a little bit of a value bet, half unit on Abdurakhimov. Definitely plus 385 is good value for him. So the pick is going to be Blaydes by decision. The next fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Islam Makhachev, who is 17-1, taking on Davi Ramos, who is 10-2. The opening betting line for this one was Makhachev minus 405 to Davi Ramos plus 285. Right now we are seeing Makhachev minus 325, Ramos plus 265. So early action came in on Davi Ramos. I myself threw a half unit on him at plus 285, and it looked to be like the right side of the equation. He dropped down to as far as plus 160, 170 for a few days, but now he's going back up to plus 265. And initially I thought, Davi Ramos, he's a former ADCC 2015 76 kilogram champion, one of the highest level grapplers on the roster. And I thought that it was going to be a grappling match and that it was good value. But realistically, the line was set pretty accurately. And I'm not saying I regret the bet, but I don't think there was too much value on it after all. Because after taping this fight, Makhachev is just simply the better MMA fighter. He is the better striker by a pretty decent margin. He's got better movement, distance management. He throws the better kicks of the two. He's got a decent overhand left. He knocked out Gleison Tebow with it not too long ago. And Ramos looked decent on the feet against Austin Hubbard. He looked a little improved. He was throwing some good kicks. He's throwing good punches for a change. He had some power in his punches. He was counter-striking pretty well. He typically before that fight, he was just throwing big looping punches, big telegraph kicks, and because he wasn't worried about being taken down. He was just trying to close the distance to get the takedown himself. But he definitely looked to improve his striking a little bit last fight. So respect to Ramos for evolving his MMA game, but he needs the takedown, or he needs the top control. He needs the back take to win this fight, and I just don't think he's going to get it because Islam Makhachev is, I think, a better grappler. And even though Ramos won the ADCC 2015 gold medal in his weight class, which as I mentioned before on the podcast, the ADCC takes place in Abu Dhabi every year. It's the highest level no-gi competition in the world, and Davi Ramos won the whole fucking thing. So extremely high level grappling, but Makhachev is master in sport and sambo. He's been grappling his whole life. He trains with Khabib on a daily basis, the best grappler in the world, and he's adapted his game for MMA way better. His takedown defense is elite. He never gets on his back. He was a little reckless versus Sarukian getting back to his feet, and that won from the takedowns, but I think he knew Sarukian is not much of a back taker and was a little reckless getting up to the feet. I don't think he will be reckless at all versus Ramos. I think he will be extremely technical in there, stuffing takedowns, scrambling really effectively, and maybe even Makhachev will be the one ending up in top position, looking to get that Dagestani handcuff, Dagestani triangle, get those dominant positions that he's so known for. And on the feet, I just think Makhachev will be able to outstrike Ramos. He will have the better movement, the better kicks, and we will probably see Makhachev look for his own takedown and put Ramos on his back, because Ramos is an elite level grappler, but he really likes top position. He needs a back taker. He needs top position to be effective. He's not nearly as effective on his back. So if Makhachev is able to avoid the back take in this one, I think it's his fight to win. Makhachev is just simply the better overall fighter. Initially, I mean, it's not the worst idea to bet a half unit, 1 unit on Ramos at this price, because it will probably be a grappling fight, and he is an elite level grappler, and he could pull off the upset victory in this one, but I just don't see it happening. Makhachev is really entering his prime right now. If Khabib wasn't his best friend and the champion, we could see Makhachev possibly getting the belt at some point at lightweight, but with the current landscape of things, I don't think that'll happen. I think Makhachev will win the fight, and I'm going to go with a decision. I don't think he'll finish Makhachev. I think it'll be a really fun scramble-filled fight with a lot of takedown defense, which I personally like a lot, but I trust Islam's takedown defense, his cardio a little bit more than Ramos's, and his overall MMA game is much better than Ramos, so the pick is going to be Makhachev to get it done by decision. The next fight is the co-main event of the evening, taking place in the lightweight division. We have Paul Felder, who is 16-4, taking on Edson Barboza, who is 20-7. The opening betting line for this one was Barboza at minus 175 to Felder at plus 135. Right now we are seeing Barboza minus 155, Felder plus 135. So that early action came in on Felder's way, and it was actually almost a near pick'em for a while. I think Barboza got as low as minus 130, but ever since then that action has come back on Barboza, and this is a rematch, I should mention, between the two. They fought back in July of 2015, and Barboza was able to win that fight by decision, but I think that since that fight, Felder has been the one making the more improvements. I think Felder is still improving fight to fight, and maybe hasn't even mentioned or entered his prime yet. Meanwhile, Barboza, I think, is past his prime and on his way to a declining fighter. And I think Felder is the one more likely to make the adjustments in between the first fight and the second fight. And I think that Felder is the right side of the betting things in this one. I just can't trust Barboza at minus 155, especially coming off that knockout loss to Gaethje. It's just getting harder and harder to trust Barboza at minus money now. He did look great as the favorite against Hooker. Just body kicked him to death in that one and got the third round knockout. But I think Felder is going to learn from his mistakes in the first fight and correct them this one. So I'll talk about the first fight real quick. So Felder, it was only his third fight in the UFC. He was super green at the time, and he was throwing so many spinning attacks. He was throwing spinning elbows and fists and kicks, and they were all not really close to hitting. It's like he still throws them occasionally, but he's toned them down a lot. His output of spinning shit has decreased a lot, luckily, because it's not really a reliable offense you can go to. So Felder, his main problem is that he was staying at kicking range, and he did not have an answer for the kicks of Barboza. If you want to beat Barboza, there is a formula written in stone. You can literally, anybody will tell you this. The great fighters in MMA have been able to execute it pretty easily. Michael Johnson and Gaethje did it. Ferguson did it. Khabib did it. You have to pressure Barboza. If Barboza is on his back foot, moving backwards, not able to kick, he almost always loses. He uses a ton of energy in his footwork, circling around the octagon. He's not very conservative at all on his movements, and that's why he tends to get tired when he's moving backwards. And when he's not moving backwards, he can't kick much. He does not have much power behind his punches, and he's just nowhere near effective moving backwards. So if Felder is able to pressure Barboza and stay out of kicking range and get into boxing range, that's how Felder wins the fight. And it's easier said than done, because Hooker tried to do it early. He had a little success early, but eventually he just was out on the outside too much and got kicked to death. Was getting leg kicked and body kicked, and took an insane amount of damage versus Barboza in that fight. But if Felder comes out from the jump, is way more aggressive, is not standing on the outside, he's not letting Barboza get free kicks off without countering back, then Felder should win the fight. He should be able to, he was landing good punches in the first fight versus Barboza, but he just wasn't pressuring enough to land them consistently. And he just showed his lack of experience in that fight, but he's fought a lot more since then, picked up some good victories. Looked really good in the James Vick fight last fight. He was had good calf kicks in that fight. Was outboxing Vick and landed a lot of damage on Vick. He also got hit with some punches back himself. It wasn't a dominant performance. He wasn't overly aggressive in that fight, but it was still a nice decision victory for Felder. So I think Felder is the one who has made more improvements fight to fight. I think Felder is the more capable fighter at this point in their career. Even though Barboza still has the power in his kicks, he's still got great technique. I'm sure his patented switch kicks, leg kicks, spinning kicks will be on display, as they will always, but I'm trusting Felder to apply the right game plan and to get the decision victory in this one, possibly even knocking out Barboza in this one. With all the damage Barboza has taken in his career, coming off that nasty knockout against Gaethje last fight, it's certainly possible that Felder gets the knockout, but I'm going to be safe and pick the decision for Felder. I'm sure it'll be unlikely. I'm sure it'll be like plus 400 odds for Felder to win the decision, but I think it's going to happen. I think he's getting more calculated as a fighter, and he's going to come out here and put on one of his most calculated performances, put on a good game plan versus Barboza, and I think he's going to get the decision win. So the pick is going to be Felder to get it done by decision. and I have not laid a bet on him yet at plus 135, but I'd say that he is well within value. I'd say Barboza should be minus 130 with Felder coming back at plus 110. So there's a little bit of action on the dog Felder in this one. Now the next fight is the main event of the evening for the undisputed lightweight championship. We have undisputed champion Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is 27-0, taking on interim champion Dustin Poirier, who is 25-5. The opening betting line for this one was Nurmagomedov minus 240 to Poirier at plus 205, and since then much more action is coming on the champion, the undisputed champion Khabib Nurmagomedov, pushing him all the way down to minus 450, with Poirier being at plus 360 right now. Man, just what an incredible fight. Just right off the bat, these two are elite level MMA fighters. They're both, I'd say, in the top 10 pound for pound fighters in the world right now. And this is just truly a special treat to get to witness this matchup. Both of these guys are in the prime of their career. Poirier's got a ton of momentum coming off the Holloway victory and all of his lightweight victories over Gaethje and Pettis and Alvarez. And Nurmagomedov is coming off of his biggest fight of his career, defeating Conor McGregor by 4th round submission in that one. He looked incredible in that fight, the best Khabib has ever looked. And this is just an incredible MMA fight. It's a hard fight to pick, but I have done the tape study on these two. I'll try to remain impartial, but full disclosure, I'm a huge fan of both of these guys. I would be ecstatic to see either one of them win. I would be disappointed to see either one of them lose. So it's going to be a tough fight to pick and a tough fight to stay unemotional throughout analyzing it, but I will do my best. So Khabib Nurmagomedov, the champion, we will start with him. His game plan is, like I said before with Barboza, his game plan is kind of written in stone. And Nurmagomedov, his plan is to take you down in round 1, not do too much with the takedown. He likes to get top position, to keep top position. And if you try to get up in round 1, that's the first mistake versus Khabib. What you want to do is you want to on the feet, you want to be defensive, you want to have a wide base, you want to try to not let Khabib take you down. But if he does get you down in round 1, you're not getting back up. You're not breaking the grip. You're not escaping. No one has ever done it, in my opinion, except for maybe Gleison Tebow a couple years ago. He was able to stuff the takedowns, break the grip of Khabib. But in the past 5 years, no one that's got taken down by Khabib has gotten back up. Ahkmedov got back to his feet. He got dragged back down. I mean, he might have escaped 1 or 2 takedowns, gotten back to his feet and stayed up for a few seconds. But if Khabib gets you down, he's almost always winning the round. He has the best top control in the sport, the best ground and pound probably in the sport. I'd say Jack Hermansson's ground and pound is up there with Khabib's, but Khabib's positional dominance is just unlike any grappler in the history of MMA. His striking on the feet is not great. He doesn't have the best defense, but he looked really good versus McGregor on the feet. Versus in round 2, he was able to drop McGregor by faking the double leg and coming over top with the overhand right. In rounds 3 versus McGregor, he stood and traded with McGregor in the pocket for the whole round, which was unheard of. People thought that if the fight was on the feet, it was clearly going to be a Conor getting the better of the exchanges. But we learned in round 3, Khabib's is a fucking not scared of anything, man. He's a motherfucker. He stood toe to toe with McGregor, the guy who's supposed to be the best striker in the sport, and he had an extremely competitive round with him. Now, I did give the round to Conor by the slimmest of margins, but Khabib was landing powerful right hands in those exchanges, and his defense looked good, Khabib just showed that his striking is a lot better than we thought. So, getting over to Dustin Poirier now, I think Poirier might be the better well-rounded of the two, to be honest. Poirier is a black belt on the ground. He's got decent defensive grappling. He's got good submissions, but in terms of stuffing takedowns and staying off the bottom, getting back to his feet, he's not the best. If you watch the fight versus Eddie Alvarez, he jumped guillotine a few times, which were 2 huge mistakes he made in that fight. And if he won't make those mistakes versus Khabib. I'm almost certain of it, because he's been drilling this idea into his mind to stay off the ground, to avoid any dumb grappling mistakes versus Khabib. And I think he will avoid making too vital of an error, like pulling, like jumping guillotine or pulling guard, like whatever he did versus Alvarez. But he ended up on bottom versus Alvarez, and he got mounted versus Alvarez, and he was being controlled. Luckily for Poirier, he got hit with a 12-6 elbow and got the position taken away and quickly knocked out Alvarez shortly after. But he was in a bad spot, and that is, I wanted to lean Poirier's way. I wanted to believe that he would win the fight, because I think the betting value is certainly on Dustin Poirier in this one. But after seeing that position that Alvarez got in, he was able to mount Poirier. Poirier was a little reckless getting back to his feet. That pretty much sealed the deal that I think that Khabib will be able to get dominant position on Poirier and will be able to win early rounds versus Dustin Poirier. Now, Poirier's best chance of winning the fight is to stuff the takedowns early, to land hard shots on the feet, possibly rock Khabib and possibly knock him out, or try to do what Conor did in you lose the first 2 rounds and you try not to take as little damage and try to use as little energy as possible, and then in rounds 3, 4, and 5, that's when you start to take over, and that's a path to victory for Poirier. I mean, he has decent defensive grappling, and he's tough as fuck, man. He could take a beating and he will still be there in rounds 3, 4, and 5. So I think that's a great chance of how this fight ends up going. Is Khabib gets to take down in round 1, Poirier stays on bottom, accepts bottom, doesn't try to use much energy, and just conserves energy, loses round 1. In round 2, Khabib is going to start get the takedown again. He's going to start looking to unleash more ground and pound. He's going to look to start advancing position, maybe getting submission, and really doing damage in top position. And then in rounds 3, 4, and 5, Khabib has a little bit of a nasty habit of wanting to strike a little more. He did it versus Iaquinta. He did it versus McGregor. And if he does that versus Poirier, I think he's going to be in trouble, because right now I think Poirier has the better cardio and the better striking compared to McGregor or Iaquinta. Even though those guys are talented strikers, they have good cardio, they can go the full 5 rounds. I think Poirier is just a different animal. And that fight versus Max Holloway last fight, one of the highest level MMA fights of all time, was a 5-round striking battle with Max Holloway, one of the greatest fighters ever himself, and Dustin Poirier was able to outstrike, outbox, land the better, harder shots, and rock Max Holloway multiple times throughout that fight. He dug deep, he had good cardio in the later rounds, had a high output in all 5 rounds, and it was just a miraculous performance from Dustin Poirier. So getting down to it, it really comes down to if you think that Poirier can capitalize on the moments striking on the feet. Will he be able to land hard punches while the short amount of time that this fight is on the feet? And I think he will, honestly. I think he's going to have Khabib in some trouble. I think he will maybe have Khabib rocked at some point, and we'll have Khabib shooting sloppy takedowns, and I really think it's going to be a crazy back and forth type of fight. And the official prediction you're going to get out of me is for Khabib Nurmagomedov to win a decision 48-47. I think it'll be a fight where we see Khabib get the early lead, really similar to the McGregor fight, where he wins round 1, comfortably. He wins round 2 dominantly. Rounds 3, 4, and 5, I think Poirier is going to come back a little bit. I think he's going to come back and win round 3. I think maybe Poirier wins round 4, but I think Khabib will come out here and dig deep into his championship ability, and he will eventually start coming back, and he will win a round in round 4 or 5, and he will secure the 3 rounds and secure the decision for him. But I really think that we're in for a classic fight. I think it's going to be a high-level back-and-forth fight. I think we're going to see both guys win rounds. We're going to see Poirier hurt with ground and pound on the ground. We're going to see Nurmagomedov hurt with strikes on the feet. It's a really, really incredible fight. I mean, it's hard to pick. I can go back and forth on it. We could see Nurmagomedov be much more dominant than I think. We could see Poirier make mistakes trying to get back up to his feet early, get dragged back down, get his cardio sucked out of him, and maybe Khabib will run away with it. Maybe he will get him down in the 3rd and the 4th round and continue that ground and pound onslaught, and maybe even get a late finish or run away with a decision. Or we could see Poirier knock Khabib out in the first 2 rounds, catch him on the feet with the punch coming in, like we thought that Conor could do. But Poirier, I think, has the better footwork. He's got the better defensive grappling, and his boxing technique is really the best in MMA right now. And it was on full display versus Holloway last fight. So it's a tough fight to predict. In the betting window, I think that there's a lot of value on Poirier. I think that anything above plus 300 on Poirier is a value bet. So on plus 360 right now, I think it's worth a value stab on Poirier for a half unit, 1 unit. And I have 1 unit myself on him at that price, and possibly we'll even add more. Maybe it won't go more than 2 units, but even though I think Poirier will lose the fight, I think that it's crazy that he's plus 360. Poirier was disrespected last fight as the 2-1 underdog versus Max. He won that fight pretty comfortably, and I think he's getting disrespected in the betting lines here again. Khabib's that dominant champion, and that's why you're seeing the heavy action come in on him the past few days. And it is a good matchup for him. He should be able to get the top down in position. He should be able to do good work with it. But it's a lot closer fight than people are making it out to be. I think it's going to be an all-time classic in MMA history. I'm really looking forward to the fight. I cannot wait for Saturday, man. This is going to be a crazy, crazy fight. It's only 72 hours away from the time I'm recording this because the main card does start at 2 p.m. So the pick is going to be Khabib Nurmagomedov to win by 48-47 decision. The betting value right now is on Dustin Poirier, and I hope everybody enjoys this fight. I hope it lives up to the expectations, and my expectations are high for it. It's going to be an all-time classic, I think, and I think Khabib retains the title in championship form. So that's going to do it for the podcast this week. Have not made many bets for this card yet. I put 0.67 units on Ziam plus 165. Might lock in a unit on Salikhov at plus money. Let's see here. We got half a unit on Leron Murphy at plus 370. 1.7 units on Andrea Lee at minus 165. 1 unit on Carlos Diego Ferreira at plus 265. I'll probably add a half unit to Abdurakhimov at plus 385. Got a half unit on Ramos at plus 285. And might add a unit to Felder plus 135. Have not decided yet. And lastly, 1 unit on Dustin Poirier at around plus 330 average odds. So we'll update my Bet MMA tips page with my final bets later. And you can follow me on Twitter at UFC to see my thoughts at the fights about the fights as the fight day gets closer. But that is going to do it for episode 74 of the Martian MMA podcast. We previewed all 13 fights going down on UFC 242 this Saturday, September 7th, 2019. Once again, the 4 first prelims start at Fight Pass and ESPN at 10 a.m. Eastern. 4 prelims on FX, the TV channel, at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Then the main card on ESPN Plus pay-per-view at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So hope everybody enjoys the fights. I hope it's a great weekend of fights, and I will catch you all next week. Peace.